Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. And for today's listeners, I'm really excited to introduce Lauren Hermann. And she and her husband are actually clinicians, and she has pivoted to copywriter and agency owner. And I'm really happy to have her on the show. Just for the audience, I think there's some internet issues. So if we get cut out, we just stay tuned. Lauren, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, there's an internet lag, but briefly introduce yourself and talk about your journey and how you're doing what you're doing now.
Absolutely. Yep. As you said, my name is Lauren. So my background is actually in medical speech language pathology. And I when I say speech therapist, people think that I work with children who stutter and articulation issues, but my background is in adult medical. So I spent 8 years working in hospitals and nursing homes across the country, mainly with stroke survivors, as well as end of life comfort care for both communication and swallowing. However, right at the end of 2019, my husband had finished up his fellowship in pain medicine in California. And so we were moving to Pennsylvania for his first job. And then that's right when COVID happened. The world shut down. There were hiring freezes. There was only one hospital in the small town. That was like my one shot to get the job in the setting that I love the most. But because of the furloughing and the hiring freezes, I could not find work. So that is when I made my first pivot into private practice. I tried to start teletherapy, see if I could do remote practice. But because I serve the Medicare population, there were a lot of barriers in getting Medicare coverage in teletherapy for speech therapy services back then. So I was very limited. And then my husband told me he wanted to move again. And so I just realized I needed to find a job where I didn't rely on state licensing, insurance credentialing, and also with just COVID, turning everything upside down. At the same time, when we were talking about moving again and COVID was still shutting everything down, I was also writing a book about my profession called But My Speech is Fine. And it's like a chicken soup for the soul style book, lots of small stories from myself and other clinicians around the US, where we just share what medical speech pathologists do through storytelling, lots of eye-opening stories. I published that book at the end of 2020. It did really well. And that's when I thought, how can I combine my passion for healthcare and speech therapy with my skill and talent and interest in writing? And then that is when it led me down the rabbit hole to discover copywriting. And so that's what I do now is copyright for the healthcare industry.
Yeah, really interesting. And there's a lot to unpack there. So one question I have for you is this, you're with a lot of clinicians in healthcare, what sort of clinical skills, because a lot of clinicians were there, I know we're actually brainwashed to think that if we don't work in a hospital, if we don't write notes or order medications, then a medical degree is useless. But you've actually shown that clinical skills can translate into other things. So what are critical skills needed to pivot?
Yes. So that it's like you're right. We've been brainwashed to believe it. It's the biggest myth. I see it in all sorts of Facebook groups, burnout clinicians saying, I don't have any transferable skills. I can just evaluate and treat swallowing for the rest of my life and nothing else. And so that's when I come in and basically I do a lot of the same steps as a copywriter as I did as a clinician. And what I mean by that is when I was a clinician, usually the process would be is that I would get a consultation. So someone would think they needed my services. They would come to me. I would do a screen or a consultation call to vet them to see if we'd be a good fit. I would see what are their problems, what are their goals. Then I would come up with a plan of care for them. I'd dig into their past medical history, and then we'd have a treatment plan. I would reassess, I'd document, help them meet their goals, and discharge. So as a copywriter, same thing, but now it's not medical, it's marketing. And so I have some come to me because they think they need my help. We do a consultation call. I figure out what are their problems, what are their goals. I say I'll dig into their PMH, their past medical history, but it's actually their past marketing history. So I can see what their marketing history is. And then if we're a good fit, I come up with a new POC. So instead of plan of care, it's plan of copy. And so I map out that strategy, figure out what that is. We work together, I reassess, document, and then we see once they meet their goal, and then I offboard and get that testimonial. So it's the same steps and it's the same type of brain flow and strategizing, but it's just now I'm not evaluating people's swallowing or their language skills. I'm actually improving just the language of their marketing and helping them reach more patients and more clients for a bigger impact.
Interesting. And then a follow-up question I have for you is for physicians or healthcare workers interested in this career of copywriting, what are some ideal clients? Like what do people come to you for? You mentioned marketing, but what about other was writing, or what sort of unmet needs and what sort of niches would healthcare copywriters flourish in?
So I'd say the biggest thing that I'm niching into is email marketing, because they need to communicate what they offer. They need to connect newsletters, healthcare newsletters, especially. A lot of these business owners, they have no time or no desire to be in their inboxes and writing these emails and managing it. But email marketing is huge leverage for business growth, and people who aren't using it are missing out on growing their email list, their revenue. And so I live in the inbox now. So I help with sales emails, newsletters, all sorts of sequences, because no one, as I'm sure as you're aware, when we're in the healthcare training, we all are trained so well in being clinicians and serving other people, but we are never told how to market ourselves and how to really make a business out of those skills we develop. So email marketing is by far the biggest. And then websites for private practices. I know that's a big one. They just feel very scattered. So a lot of private practice owners come to me to rebuild their websites, rewrite their websites. And then sales pages is another one for a lot of course creators. So there are a lot of healthcare entrepreneurs that do develop courses to train other clinicians in certain types of therapies, their certification courses, but they struggle with marketing that. So those tend to be the top three. I've also done some YouTube scripts for a lot of those that are in the more online entrepreneurial space. They do short form videos, so I'll write the scripts for them, or some podcast ads as well. If they're advertising, they want me to write the ads for the other podcaster to read off of to market their business. So that's my world, but I would definitely say number one is email. And then after that, it's websites and then sales pages.
Interesting. And where do you see blogs in all of this? Because when I talk to a lot of people don't read blogs or do blogs, where do you see that fitting into the picture?
So blogs are important, but I would say as from an interest perspective, so there's copywriting and then there's content writing. Blogs are on the content side. So that's just more educational, it's longer form, it's more nurturing, whereas I do the conversion copy to get sales and just to speed up the process of the customer journey. Blogs, we do offer that, and I see it as an important part of the funnel to drive more people to your websites. So in newsletters, I'll send people to the blogs to then boost the ranking up on Google for their website. If I drive traffic over there. So it is important, but I do see more and more people coming for really emails over blogs, because I think they just see a higher ROI on emails over blogs, since that's more of a long-term nurture game.
Interesting. So talking about email marketing, because I'm a avid fan of that, and you've written over 1,000 emails for healthcare businesses. What have you learned about what actually works in healthcare email marketing versus what most healthcare entrepreneurs think works?
So in the clinical space, a lot of healthcare entrepreneurs, private practice owners, or if they're researchers especially, love to use their medical jargon and their research lingo and just sound very intelligent and show they know what they're talking about, but nobody reads that and nobody understands. And so I have to bring them down to earth and let them know one of the rules in copywriting is nobody reads. They scan. And if they're interested in what they scan, maybe they'll go back and read. And so when I've had these business owners have subject lines or titles for blogs that were just so technical and wordy, and they're trying to cram everything about what is evidence-based about their new approach to this new type of sensory motor therapy. And it's like, no, that's not what people care about. What is it? What's the goal? So retraining these business owners that, like, yes, you care about the evidence-based process. You care about the features and the stats and the data, but your patients just care what's in it for them.
Yeah.
what's their child going to get out of it? What can they do at the end of the day? And speaking more to the benefit and not so much to the process. I see a lot of healthcare people get so stuck in the process. So that's been a huge one. And then also really guiding my clients into trying to not speak to everybody. So they want to bring in their services and say, oh, I help this population and then I do this and this. But when you speak to everybody, you speak to nobody. So really having them whittle down their messaging. So one at a time, just speak to that one child that you can help, or that one parent, or that one grandmother, and this one condition they're battling, and just speak to that. So those, I think, are the two biggest ones, is the type of language they use. I've actually had one of my first clients complain to me saying, you're making my email sounds too conversational. And so I had to explain to him that's the goal. We want it conversational. And sure enough, he started getting more replies. The engagement was going up, which he wasn't getting before. So it's okay, fine, I'm sold. And it's just getting them off of that kind of that degree level of thinking and that academic level of thinking into, these are humans, they're just people. So talk to them like that.
Yeah. And because you really talked about like the top 3 recommendations and also a success story of healthcare business. The other question I have for you is, compared to traditional marketers, because a lot of it's the written word. And why do you believe that clinicians make exceptional copywriters compared to just the traditional run-of-the-mill marketers?
So I think, especially in the healthcare space, with our industry knowledge and our industry experience, so much of messaging, marketing, and communicating, it's really tapping into that I can empathize with you, the customer. I've been where you've been. I want to guide you because I understand you. And so having a clinician for the industry, they've had their feet on the ground. They have those heartbreaking stories. They have those triumphant moments they can pull from that can be woven into the marketing. So it's not just this very sterile type of, here are the 3 features, and then here's the benefit, and here's the price type of marketing. It's actually really weaving in that human component. And also just the amount of empathy. I feel like I see so many healthcare providers and clinicians, like we have that empathy. We've worked with people in some of the worst days of their lives. They don't want to see us when we show up in their room. They don't want to be there. And yet we have to be there and understand them, and maybe even try to persuade them, or not persuade, but encourage them to maybe follow a recommendation they don't want to follow. So for me, with speech therapy, it was always maybe recommending pureed food, blending up your food because your swallowing is impaired, or thickening up your liquids. And nobody wants that. No one would willingly agree to that. And that's also a part of marketing. So we go in with this skill that we're taught on a clinical level of how to have these conversations that's empathetic, and then guiding just very gently and on a level they can understand, to have them make an informed decision based on how well you explain both parts. And I think that's such a critical skill that I don't necessarily see taught in just your basic copywriting 101 courses. It's experiencing and living that can be transferred over into copywriting and marketing.
Yeah. Where do you see artificial intelligence playing into all of this? A lot of people are scared. It's moved from being a fad to people actually being concerned it's going to displace a lot of people. And how are you positioning yourself and viewing AI as a copywriter?
I love that question, because we're in the AI revolution basically right now. Like, it's happening. And I strongly believe AI will not take over my job, but people who know how to use AI well will. It's the people who are leveraging it, who understand that. So I'm staying up to date on AI. I use AI every single day. It speeds up my work, and I know how to be the prompting engineer and then infuse my industry knowledge, my personal stories, the interviews I do with patients of my clients, and all of that into the frameworks I know to work really well. So I've become the conductor of that, and has great outcomes, and I'm able to grow my business even faster because of AI. And there are definitely people who I think are still stuck on, I'll never use AI to do any writing or anything. I'm for it. If you want to use ChatGPT or Claude to do your marketing, it's a tool. Go for it. Just know how to use it and know those foundational marketing concepts and copywriting frameworks and your audience and all of the marketing rules you need to know to make it work. Because you can't just tell ChatGPT, write a sales sequence for me, and it's going to do it and do it well. You have to know what you're doing as the end user.
Interesting. The other thing is because you also will talk about you're almost like a digital, you're calling him from Puerto Rico. And one thing is that your family is also in the medical field. Your husband's radiology. I'm just curious, how are radiologists viewing AI? Because like they said, like pathology, radiology, a lot of these, I'm just curious for the audience.
So he's been asked that question for years. Are you afraid of losing your job also to AI because of where it is going with detecting pathology and everything? He's not. In his business, it's real. So we're really supporting each other in our business ventures now. So I'm helping him market his as he develops his. But where he's focusing is starting a teleradiology business that cuts out private equity, so that the radiologists that join, it's a profit sharing model. Because I think the two like biggest villains I keep hearing about with radiologists are AI and private equity. Like these are the things that seem to be wanting to swoop in and take over radiology.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is, again, at least in building this business, he has implemented some AI tools to help him, at least like with the brainstorming and the structuring of it. But at least from like the AI and pathology, he's not concerns. He's not all concerned. And especially, something he talks about too is, when will we get to the point where businesses, especially private equity, would be open to that kind of potential liability if AI misses something, or just what's the risk that businesses are willing to take on by replacing radiologists with AI versus using it as a tool to help supplement some reads.
Interesting. A lot of audience and listeners are also, they're interested in digital nomadism. And so talk about San Juan and the benefits and building a business and lifestyle, just a freedom business. Talk about that for the audience and listeners.
Yeah. So is one of the number one benefits to being a remote copywriter. And maybe if there are therapists that are listening, I don't know about physicians. I had an experience when I first started out as a speech therapist. I had an opportunity to go to Iceland for a week with a friend, but I had one patient that needed 30 minutes of therapy covered throughout just one 30-minute session. She was a Medicare patient. If I did not see her, she would have been cut from my list. So I had to find someone to cover her. No one would cover her. I was reaching out to people 30 minutes away. I was willing to pay them, buy them lunch. I did everything I could. No one could cover this 1.5 hour session for that week. And because of that, I had to cancel the whole trip to Iceland just so I could stay back for this 30-minute session that no one could cover. And so that was one of those moments for me, at least as like in the healthcare world, of this straps me down. This can actually prevent me from traveling. And I hated that. So from the nomad perspective, yes, I can work from anywhere in the world because there's no licensing requirements or insurance limitations that I have to abide by. And then from Puerto Rico, there is the benefit. So again, because both my husband and I are business owners, we do get a tax benefit, a tax break by being in Puerto Rico with Act 60. And so because we fall in within that umbrella, you have to live in Puerto Rico at minimum 6 months a year, but we're here way longer than that because we love the community, we love the people, we love the food, we love it here. So that gives us, again, this tax break that allows us to obviously save up for retirement way faster than what either of us could do working in hospitals. So it sped up that process for us, but also it allows us to both, him as a teleradiologist, we can pick up and we can just go, anywhere, at least in the US with him, and just work wherever we want. And I can, of course, do it any country I want, which is my big benefit. So I think it's the number one benefit that I tell people about is I'm no longer strapped to getting approvals or insurance restrictions and my ability to travel.
Interesting. And I know Puerto Rico, there's no capital gains tax. So a lot of wealthy people go there and they don't have to pay capital gains. For the Act 60, do you have to own real estate or can you rent real estate in Puerto Rico?
You have to own real estate within the first 2 years. So you're given a 2-year window to make your purchase. Yeah. A lot of people might not realize that. And so they'll rent for a long time. And if you rent past 2 years, then you no longer qualify.
Oh, okay. Excellent. We're coming to the end. And so one final thing is, because what's interesting is you came about it in a time when just like the whole world was just crumbling and you were able to pivot. What were the top mindsets that helped you navigate this period into a career of success?
Are you familiar with Marie Forleo?
Is she the growth mindset, or the name sounds familiar, but go ahead and elaborate for the audience.
She's an entrepreneur. Yeah, she's right up there with Amy Porterfield and Tony Robbins. But she wrote a book called Everything is Figure Outable. And that's always the mindset I feel like I've just lived off of just growing up, is whenever something was thrown my way or a plan just went completely upside down, it was never really this woe is me victim mentality. It's okay, there's a solution here somewhere. Everything is figure outable. This is when door closes, right? There's an opportunity. This didn't happen to me, it happened for me. So at first I was really upset because I genuinely loved being a medical speech language pathologist. So I did have a little bit of this kind of woe is me moments because I would just so desperately wanted to work in a hospital again. But once it was pretty clear to me that just was not going to happen, then it was immediate pivots to, okay, what's the solution? Everything's figured outable. This is my time to do something totally different. Oh, sacrificing all the years that I spent learning, practicing as a clinician. So being able to leverage those skills and knowledge. So I knew that it was possible. And so my mindset was very much in, this is a great opportunity for me. And I just can't wait to see where this takes me, because I was convinced that I would find something. I would pivot into something that I would end up loving.
And for the listeners and viewers, they're inspired by your message and your work, and they want to reach out to you, connect with you, and learn from you. And how can they do that?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's slp.writer on Instagram. And then if you're interested, if you need a copywriter, if you need to hire a team of clinicians to write copy for you, or you want to learn copywriting yourself in the healthcare industry, you can go to my website, thecopyclinicians.com.
Excellent. Thanks so much for the really fantastic conversation. And again, I apologize to the audience for the choppy internet, but thanks so much and keep up the great work.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.